Two Dogman stories that happened to me. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I sent you two different emails, both of which were true and happened to me. One of them happened to me and my buddy I called Mark in the story, and the other happened to me with my mother, who I never named. I have a strange request. Can you please let me know why you deleted these two episodes from your YouTube channel? Or if you even remember the stories that I'm referring to. I'll tell both stories again, and the strange things that happened after you deleted them from the internet. In the first story, I was camping with my friend who, as I already indicated, I was using the name Mark to describe. He was 3 years older than I was, but the two of us were the only teenagers staying in this small town I got stuck in when I was 15. So we used to camp out in the woods just to get away from our annoying parents. One night we saw UFOs flying in weird psychedelic formations in the night sky, but we didn't have missing time or anything like that. Maybe it was flares blowing around in the wind, I don't know. But I do know for certain that the Dogman experience we had was absolutely as real as a punch in the face. The night that this all went down, Mark and I were sitting at the campfire outside our tents in a clearing in the woods behind Mark's family's home. I kept thinking I was hearing sounds from the woods about 65 or 70 feet in front of us, not too far away, and Mark kept saying he saw something moving there in the darkness. When we would both look over there, though, there would be absolutely no movement whatsoever, and we'd go back to our conversation and relaxing. Eventually, we both peripherally saw and heard something going on in the darkness, and we both stood up. We had at least one flashlight with us because my phone still had some battery charge. But for some weird reason, neither of us even thought about that. Instead, we both squinted into the darkness, then walked around to put the campfire behind us, and squint all over again. There was this one dead tree at the tree line with gray bark in between all the healthy-looking trees. I kept thinking I was seeing part of that gray tree move, but then I kept thinking I was imagining it. When I saw two glowing animal eyes exhibiting eye shine back at me, I screamed like I had fallen off a cliff. In fact, I couldn't stop screaming, and as I screamed, I saw part of the bark of the gray tree seem to peel off from the rest of it. My eyes and brain scrambled for a second until I understood that I was seeing a gray animal moving out from behind the tree it had been camouflaged behind and next to. We were almost halfway to the woods when I had this realization, so this creature was maybe 30 feet away from us as it decided to dart in our direction. I did see its silhouette, and I saw its eyes and its long, tall teeth. It was the size of a big guy, but the teeth betrayed that it wasn't human. Come to think of it, the eyes already told us that, because human eyes don't have eye shine. Most of the rest of what I saw when looking at this thing was a humanoid, though. I had not, as yet, fully registered the canine nature of the head, but I would shortly. I had turned and run back to camp before really getting a clear view of what this creature was, and I believe that Mark had roughly the same experience. The difference was that Mark was a slightly faster runner than I was in those days, and so the Dogman caught up with me first. I remember him pouncing on me from behind, which was done with a lot more finesse and style than when I'd been tackled at school. I felt his large dog paws push each of my shoulders forward, and I toppled to the ground, helplessly off balance. When the creature landed on my back, it did not seem to have wanted to hurt me. It had one paw on my shoulder and one paw on my butt, so I was pinned face down in the dirt. But it could have been much worse. The Dogman could have done anything he wanted at that moment. So Mark, for some reason I'll never understand, decided to get the Dogman off my back. He was throwing something at the creature and making him growl. but I couldn't really see what was going on in that moment. Eventually, I felt the weight lift off me, and when I lifted my head and spit the grass and dirt out of my mouth, I was surprised to see Mark being chased away by this lion-sized dogman. When he was on all fours, this dogman's speed was unmatchable by a human, and he was just toying with poor Mark. The big dog would almost let him get away. Then he'd bound over playfully and slam him hard into a tree. I got the sense he was playing with his dinner, and I realized we were both gonna bite it that night if I didn't get help. Mark later accused me of running away and of being a coward, but what was I gonna do against that monster? The only weapon I had was the campfire, and I'd have been just as likely to injure myself with that than to do any good. No, I needed to run back to the house and get some adults to help. So that was what I did. But by the time Mark's dad and older brother joined me to run back to the spot, Mark was already free from the dogman and on his way home. He told us he'd doused the campfire and that everything was fine, but he refused to get into any details about it with any of us. He said it was nothing and that we should forget about it. I thought that was kind of weird, as my own heart was still beating 1,000 times a minute. So we went back into the house and started getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang, and I was informed that it was someone to see me. That in and of itself was weird. I was a teenager staying with my family's friend in the country, and it was after dark. Who was going to be ringing the doorbell specifically asking to see me? And then why would my friend's mother just blandly call me to the door as though this were a normal occurrence? So I walked out front and there were two men in business suits standing there. They didn't ask me anything, but they informed me of a list of facts. First they told me my name. Then they told me my relationship to Mark. The one on the right would list a fact, and then the one on the left would usually list the next one, although sometimes one of them would do two facts in a row. Most of the things they said were true, and some of them I wondered how they could even know. Sometimes, though, they would list a fact that wasn't a fact at all, and I would begin to reject what they had said. Before I could, though, they were on to the next one, and the next one, most of which I did agree with. My head was about to spin when they suddenly began badgering me about my experience of only minutes prior. They told me that I did see the dogman, and they called it the dogman. They told me that I saw it, and that I knew I saw it. But I was never going to tell anyone that I saw it. They said I would find my own reasons and excuses, but I would never tell anyone about what happened that night. After a while, I realized they weren't lecturing Mark, they were only lecturing me. And you know what? Mark had refused to talk about it. I figured they must have gotten to Mark first, probably out in the woods, and that they were the reason he was behaving so strangely. I told the two men to screw off, and I slammed the door in their face. Almost as soon as I walked away, they were ringing the doorbell again. I told everyone to ignore them, but instead Mark's father answered this time. After a brief chat with the two businessmen, he angrily ordered me to finish my conversation with them. It was kind of sick how much control they had over everyone in the room, but how little their tricks seemed to be working on me for whatever reason. Eventually they just told me to be silent about it or my parents would punish me. In fact, I did get punished for disobeying these men in the dark business suits that very night. They seemed to be able to make the people around me punish me for them. So I gave up early on, and I just kept quiet about the entire story. So Mark actually helped me out writing the original version of the first email I sent to you. But when I wrote to him about the fact that it was no longer on your YouTube page, he acted like he didn't know what story I was talking about. When I went over the details with him, he denied almost all of them. His version of what happened had no dogman in it, and no businessmen wearing black either. But His version concurred with mine when I wrote the original but now missing version. I wasn't really making the connections between all these confusing things until the other video you did on my second email went MIA from your page just today. That was the one about the time I visited my mother's house a few years back, and she saw a dogman looking in a window at me while I was there. She dropped a glass she was carrying and screamed like a horror movie star, pointing at the window behind me. When I turned, I saw a shadow running away, but I couldn't be certain of what I'd seen. My mother's description of the creature matched mine of the earlier, now forgotten Dogman experience I had with Mark. Just like that time, these strange people came to the front door a few minutes later, but this time they seemed to be mainly speaking gibberish. Mom invited them in, but they stayed out front, uttering non sequiturs. Mom giggled several times at their nonsense, unsure if they were trying to be funny or not. Finally, one of them seemed to ask if they could come inside, but I must have heard him wrong because that was when the people just walked away from the house, almost in formation. They didn't even wait for an answer to the question. They just asked to come in, and then boogied on out. Again, my mom helped me write the version of the story that I sent to you. When I saw it's no longer on your page at all, my initial reaction was that Mom would be hurt and sad. But then, I remembered what happened with Mark, and I realized that I couldn't even guess what my mother's reaction was going to be. Would she remember the incident that we wrote about together? Would she even remember me? We'd like to thank Agni Gonzalez for being a badass and sending us dollars. Please join us in welcoming our newest $10 a month member, Agni Gonzalez. Mess with Agni and you get wrecked. That's assuming I'm pronouncing that correct. Agni Gonzalez is so cool that Agni Gonzalez already saw this episode yesterday. If you'd like to be as brilliant and eternal as Agni Gonzalez, all you have to do is click that join button under any of our videos, and then you can become our newest $10 a month channel member. Then you'll get to see all our secret uncensored shows. You'll get to see our over 25 hours of secret uncensored archives. And you'll get to see our advanced preview episodes whenever possible. We've got other fun ways to become part of the Scary Stories Party too. And here's international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman to explain all the deets. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.